Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this latest edition of Tales from Outer Space. Hope you enjoy. Wow, written by Weird Spectre. January 5th, 1977 CE. 21st day of the second month, day of harvest, 5182 AP. The Corian research vessel, Winds of Discovery, winged into existence behind the largest gas giant of Candidate 25561-D star system. The candidate world in question, a temperate world whose native flora was hued green, held all the hallmarks of the First People relic world, massing at 5.972 times 10 to the power of 24 kilograms, with an atmosphere of 78.09% nitrogen and 20.95% oxygen, and the obvious artificial objects both orbiting the world itself, one clearly the First People tech, the others surprisingly much lower technology, and the high elliptical asteroid orbiting the planet's parent star, dubbed 25561D_A. It was very firmly within the xenoarchaeologist status for a First People world. I congratulated myself on another successful mission and climbed from the Exo's chair, ambling down to the galley. Everyone but the captain knew it was I, Horse Knightseer, who did the real work around here, and it was a shame that no one else had the heart to tell her. The navigation officers were cheering their successful arrival. Yes, I thought, using a gas giant's mass shadow to hide their reversion to real space was a clever choice. I accepted a drink and focused my mind on the task ahead. First would be the sample of the anomalous large quantity of radio traffic from the various orbital installations around Candidate 25561-D. From there, we'd wait for an opportunity to slip warp-capable probes into the planetary surface and scan for anything useful. Until the kinds of technology at work down there could be devised, it would be much too dangerous to send personnel missions, and even then any First People installations had to be explored by machines. The protocol had precedence. The main issue was slipping past the artificial objects, mainly 25561-D_A, because of all still unknown extent of First People technology. Still, this was hardly my first direct translation unavailable, rodeo. At the time, I felt confident there was no surprises in store. January 7th, 1977 CE. 23rd day of the second month, 5182 AP. I'm telling you, those satellites are beaming propaganda, Nails roared, standing and slamming two of her fists in the galley table. Those transmissions show signs of being live events. Ailes, you cannot ignore that. Before Ailes could respond, I shifted my tray of food so that it was supported by my vestigial limb and placed a hand on each scientist's shoulder, more firm than friendly. What in the hell's gotten into you two? It appeared the two of the most learned scientists in the exploratory corps had found something remarkably interesting about the floor at their feet. What were you arguing about? These primitive satellites, Ball said quickly. They're broadcasting constantly, hundreds of languages, thousands, cultural achievements, press conferences. We sent out one of the warp drive-equipped probes to pick up some older signals too. And during the last heliocentric cycle was what the broadcasters call the Olympics, in a place called Montreal. It showed gymnastics and shooting and cooperation of a kind of unrivaled in the civilized galaxy. Of course it did, because the world is broadcasting First People propaganda. It's the last light flung from a dying species. Hells, you've read the archaeological text. How else would a species who claimed to tame the atom in 8,000 generations commemorate themselves? Ailes replied, voice barely more than growling. How do you explain the nuclear radiation our probes found from almost one heliocycle ago, then? That sounds like a species with a nuclear arsenal testing their weapons. Nails snorted. You can't seriously be suggesting that not only did the First People survive the last 67 million years, about 66 or 67 million heliocycles of this world, but that their descendants, who would be so fatally stupid as to test an atomic weaponry on their home planet. Before I could discipline either of them, one of the junior sensor technicians entered hurriedly, visibly shaken, and made a direct course to her exo upon seeing me.
The executive officer,
the shrill-voiced young female said, snapping to attention.
We have a problem. The transmissions, you best see it for yourself.
There is no doubt then, Ailes said, dumbstruck and slack-jawed as she stared at the monitor. These apes aren't just propaganda broadcasts. They're alive and, it seems suicidally stupid. How many nuclear warheads? I asked, stunned.
Conservative estimates are at least 40,000, probably closer to 60,000,
the junior technician replied. Wow, I muttered, taken aback. That's more nukes than half our naval fleet. The room was silent. And you're sure these broadcasts are live? Asked Ailes for the third time. The junior sensor tech ran her models and simulations again and nodded.
We've got a very sensitive sensor array. What we are seeing wasn't broadcasted out, it's just signals that are leaking from the satellites. I corroborated some of the signals too. One of the long-range warp probes is on its way to the outer edge of one of the nearest star systems to hopefully confirm their claims about reaching the natural satellite orbiting their world under this A-Pool-O program. We have been able to confirm a few things. Long-range telescopes confirm that 10 kiloton detonation of atomic weapons around 1/12 of a heliocycle ago by the Soviet subculture, for example.
What was wrong with these apes? I asked myself. The sensor technician flashed some high-quality images of the apes and their competitions. A woman in pink clothing, surrounded by males wearing what I could only assume was formal clothing, commemorating the festival or ceremony. She must, I thought, be a head of state or a monarch of some kind. This is what I was talking about earlier, Ball said. This Olympics. That woman is a queen, sort of like an empress, but it's more of a ceremonial position, I think. Watch their sports, watch! What followed was a completion of the best moments of the games. A man from the eastern part of the planet's Asian subcontinent performing a series of somersaults in mid-air and landing with perfect posture. Despite suffering from a broken knee, according to the doctors immediately after he collapsed, screaming in agony at the end of dismount. 5 of the Americans won the highest accolade of the events, a sort of pendant made of gold, and overcoming opponents in fisticuffs while wearing oversized red mitts. A man from one of the 2 Germanies won another gold pendant for succeeding in a sort of stylized sword fighting with what looked like a rapier made of foil. A young man set a new record in the hurdles event despite being new to the sport. The daughter of the monarch partook in the games too, riding a large brown cattle animal with 4 legs. A female one with the highest accolade in archery despite never having competed at the international level before. It isn't just me, is it? I asked. These, what do they call themselves, sensor technician?
Humans, Exo.
These humans are utterly and completely insane, aren't they? 3 of the 4 present nodded agreement, but Walls rested on his back leg and drew the front 2 up against his chest, surprisingly alike how these humans sat. With respect, Exo, I don't think they are. Look at the world they evolved on. A holographic image glittered into view. Candidate 25561-D, spinning on its axis as though it had decided to appear miniature and orbit the meeting's room's light fixture. Then the rotation stopped, and the image focused on the primary continent, the one which the humans called Africa, and started showing climatographic data and information on the relative scarcity of resources at the time these apes first evolved sentience. Africa, at the time of the humans' development, was hell. We would not have survived there, Exo. As it is, they only pull through by viciously competing with rival hominid species, such as what they call the, He consulted his handpad. Homo neanderthalis. I think that's how they say it. Worse, they were spread to the winds, hunter-gatherers until very recently. In evolutionary terms, being spread across the unbelievably variable conditions of their world. Then the eruption of a supervolcano thinning out their population, followed by 1 or 2 ice ages. They were taught the value of versatility.
Your point?
Nails asked, sounding genuinely interested rather than dismissive. We just watched a man with a broken leg perform gymnastics for no other reason than the glory of his nation. We watched two competitors in vastly different fields, both difficult to learn, excel, despite having spent just over one Helios cycle learning how to partake in them, against competition who in some cases have spent their whole lives training for it. They're adaptable, too, making up whole new tactics on the fly in their more physical sports to counteract unexpected moves by an opponent.
They are also stronger than any other species we know of, save the first people, and maybe the Loti,
Ailes added, thinking. Don't be stupid. The Loti are an old wives' tale. As far as the first people, of course they're equal in strength. This planet was some kind of a re-evolution program, I suppose. The course of evolution on this world has been subtly shifted towards the first people-like outcome since the KT impactor event on this planet, 67 million years ago. But you're right, the human strength, versatility, and intelligence could be a problem, said Walls.
The junior technician spoke up. It's a problem that might very well, solve itself, she said, then swallowed nervously at the looks she was getting. All I'm saying is, they might never learn of galactic life. They've got an armada's worth of nuclear weapons aimed at one another, possibly enough to wipe out their entire species, despite their higher-than-norm radiation resistance. And even if not, take a look at this.
A loose timeline replaced the image of Africa, a timeline detailing the history of human society.
They spent effectively 90% of their evolutionary history as hunter-gatherers so far, since before they were what they now call humans. Then all of a sudden, about 12,500 years ago, the coming of agriculture.
What? Oz asked. I shared his surprise. My understanding of archaeology and ancient history had it that we spent 24,000 years on agriculture, and then a further 8 centuries to reach the level of technology humans were at now. That it took them less than half the time to achieve the same was worrying. No, more than that. It terrified me, and still does.
While there may have been a few novelty steam engines 2,000 years ago, it was 270 years ago that the first steam machine was used to draw water from flooded mines.
And already they have an understanding of genetics, relativity, nuclear physics, chemistry, and their own psychology, I asked.
Indeed, but for every advantage their exponential intelligence and versatile psychology gives them comes a corollary demerit. Our species may have been slow to develop the same industrial technologies they did, but we understood, once we started burning anthracite and other types of coal, that they would harm our atmosphere. Even if they don't class themselves with those atomic weapons, they don't even know global warming is something to be concerned about yet. I suspect they'll probably wipe themselves out within, say, half of one of their centuries.
The others nodded sagely, and I saw the problem with that. If neither nuclear warfare nor poisoning their biosphere kills them, though, they'll grow back stronger, no? Their versatility would immediately put them ahead of us, at least in understanding the effects of radioactive fallout or climate control. They realized this was true, too. My species has, to this day, used only 3 nuclear weapons on planets, and a total of 12 in our entire history. That's less than these humans tested in the 5 months we watched their world fall.
And we can't take more proactive steps either, even if that first people artifact weren't in the way. If even the single breeding colony of humans survived, then the entire galaxy would be at risk in a few tens of thousands of years at most. Humans hardened against an attempt at making them extinct, and probably angry as well.
Ailes looked disappointed to be saying it, which was interesting. A thick, heavy silence that rang deafeningly loud filled the room as we all considered the ramifications of the discovery. Extinguishing the human race entirely, the sort of act that they would call genocide, wouldn't be something that we'd do unless directly and willingly attacked by an existential threat, unable to be reasoned with. But even if it were an option, it might not be feasible. Just a single nuclear weapon could have slacked the winds of discovery if we'd been discovered. And even our most heavily armored warships wouldn't have fared much better. Calling for backup, should we have been found, wasn't an option. Suddenly Walls said, I vote we help them. All eyes were on him. They clearly don't understand the cliff edge they are swiftly approaching. They could be a great ally on the galactic stage, especially against the Ashtai aggressors. And even if not, we'd be condemning them to almost certain death if we didn't at least try to help.
It is not like that we're going to wipe them out, Ailes returned.
No, if we don't save them from this, are we not complacent in another kind of species-wide cleansing? Whether that's due to our acts or lack thereof. What exactly would make us better than the Ashtai?
The room had a comfortable atmosphere. I don't think any of us slept well that night. I certainly didn't. April 18th, 1977 CE. First day of the 4th month, 5182 AP. In the intervening months, we bore witness to humanity. We managed to warp 2 satellites into high-orbit installations, small enough and with minimal power requirements as to be undetectable. And one rainy night, we dropped an automated probe onto a large island just off the European continent to learn more about these remarkable people. The probe's ephemerals kept it aloft, cushions of force pressing against the ground, and from it sprung a complement of drones no larger than native insects. No doubt some would be lost to birds, others to environmental hazards, but to all but the most directed examination, the machines appeared to be little more than pests. The flies infiltrated everything: museums, religious sites, government buildings. For months we watched. We tapped diplomatic cables, decrypted radio transmissions, watched TV, and raided more than a few libraries just trying to understand. Members of my crew became experts on Christianity, Judaism, Islam, Buddhism, in Platonic dualism and Cartesian hyperbolic doubt, and Augustine's just war theory and his theodicy of problem of evil. The psychologists learned Freud's theories, and historians pored over humanity's past, all to try and figure out just what exactly was wrong with these apes. The military historians in particular were enthralled, discussing the finer points of Sun Tzu's art of war, while those who obsessed over politics of the world debated Machiavelli's views versus those of Chanakya. I think that must have been when the sleepless nights began. As the ship's executive officer, it was my duty to immerse myself in every account of mankind's warfare. But I must admit, I failed in this duty. In most cases, I could barely muster the courage to read my own subordinate synopsis of them. Some, though, I felt obliged to fully review. Caesar's victory in the Battle of Alesia was one such one. When faced with an impossible choice, that is, either attacking a numerical superior force which has the high ground, or waiting for the enemy force to run out of supplies in their encampment despite knowing full well that his enemy had sent out messengers for aid, Caesar chose to invent a third option by walling in the Vercingetorix, then constructing walls to defend his position there, and in doing so, putting out his foe's strategic advantage from under him. Not to mention his ability to hold Gallic cavalry and soldiers. This wasn't one Roman's skills, either. Don't even get me started on the Battle of Agincourt. It was again the lateral thinking that filled my nightmares. What if the enemies discover our probes? I would ask myself. Can we destroy them before they are disabled, subsumed, and harvested for their technological wealth? We'd seen how smart these apes were, after all. Not only in their brazen and insane military tactics, large-scale and small, there were stories of man wielding a broadsword on the beaches of Normandy, facing down gunfire and allegedly scoring more than a few kills. But in their scientific potential, only a few years before our arrival, a scientist diagnosed a decade previously with a fatal degenerative disease had not only outlived the time that he was expected to have lived, but also revolutionized his people's understanding of black holes and their evaporation. I've often awoken in a cold sweat at the thought of some mistake, no matter how small, might have led to humanity knowing that travel faster than light is possible. If they ever learn of that great secret, I have no doubt that within 5 of their years humanity will have by far exceeded us in all metrics but age. The arguments amongst the scientific contingent continued, one faction wanting nothing more than to flee, another fearing the galaxy better off without these damned apes, and a third thinking they needed saving from their own apparent stupidity. Myself, I agreed with the first faction. The humans, it seemed, were mad, and while I had no interest in seeing harm come to any sapient species, that didn't mean that I wanted to help, per se. But I chose not to make my position known,
and instead wait out the storm for some months more. August 10th, 1977 CE. 5th day of the 6th month solstice of the sun, 5182 AP. I wish I could give this story a conclusive ending, regale you with my heroics, or find for you some deep and meaningful truth about all life that we could have learned from the humans. Instead, here is the truth. Due to causes from both within and without, our situation aboard the Windsor Discovery became untenable. From within, it was a state of the violence. One of the exterminator factions damn near killed a scientist who supported the Messianic, a word we borrowed from Humanity, faction, and got herself a prestigious position of placement into the ship's recycler while still alive for it. A junior technician tried to sabotage our hyperspace drive, presumably to force our hand in contacting the apes. From without was the launch of what humans called the Voyager probes, which would soon interrogate the gas giants of Candidate 25561-D star system, such as the one behind which we orbited. The Windsor Discovery would have been discovered, and with it humanity would learn of extraterrestrial life long before, I remain convinced, they were ready for it. I wanted greatly to leave to enjoy the comforts of civilization and share half-drunken stories of the madness of the strange species we stumbled upon in the uncivilized wastes beyond the galaxy we knew and loved. But, call me sentimental if you wish, but I felt that humanity would never be safe so long as people knew of their location. I'd seen what the divisive species could do to a crew of starship that knew nothing of beauty by existing, and while that may in part have been due to our close contact with them, it was still a more than remote possibility that our kind might act either to destroy or save the apes. I stand by my order to destroy our navigational logs to this day. On that basis, humanity was too dangerous to be contacted, either with the unethical intent to destroy them, or with the, there is a word that they have for this, naivety. That's what any decision to save them from themselves would have been. 5 Earth hours later, the flight drones met up with their carrier probe, which detonated 1/10 of a milligram of antimatter on board, releasing the energy of just under a half a ton of TNT. In the rainy moors of northwest England, of course, much of that energy was wasted as gamma rays and pions, but still, it solved the problem. The key technologies in the probe were destroyed, and all else, its carapace and external sensors and such, were all biodegradable. Not that I had any doubt that humanity won't still match the technology level that their probe represented and exceed it within the millennium. That left us orbiting a gas giant. In 5 Earth days' time, we would vanish into hyperspace and never return to this place. So, you ask me what there is to learn from all of this, yes? How to answer that succinctly? Humanity is complicated. What little time they had to spare between advancing technology at breakneck speed was absorbed in theoretical debate and moral argument, and the totality of what my species, the Corians, produced throughout our age of enlightenment, several Earth centuries in length, it eclipsed by much of the thinking humanity did in half a century. That complexity is at once the cause and result of their survival and versatility against all odds. Their minds were mapped from early in their evolutionary development to handle abstract ideas, be that what one sound is underground might mean compared to another, or what the failings and successes of various ethical views may be. What I learned was that humans are capable of things that we call fantasy, be that landing in perfect piece of gymnastic work with a broken kneecap, or merely an act of living their lives while the nations they belong to point weapons of mass destruction at one another. And that they can be driven not only by teamwork or competition, but by both, often at the same time. I often wonder about the fate of that world. Of course, I had more than enough files on that planet's history, culture, and philosophy to keep me occupied for the rest of my long lifespan. But still, it would be nice to have information after the day of August 15th, 1977. I hope simultaneously that they continue to thrive and that they were wiped out mercifully quickly. Because what I learned above all else is that humans are more than the galaxy is ready for. They're morally superior to us, smarter than us, and stronger than us as well. Their ideas are infectious, and I have no doubt that, had one of their finest military minds, such as Caesar or Alexander the Great, been shown the technology of modern space travel, either man would have revolutionized warfare and diplomacy irrevocably. I stick by my scores of broken protocols in this endeavor. Of all the sapient races the winds of discovery happened across, no one was more deserving of the power to explore the stars than the daughters of the first people. And that is exactly why humanity could not be allowed it. The stars must be theirs to take, not be guided to, lest we cloud their fine minds and abstract views. Horst Nightseer, excerpt from Memoirs on Contact. August 15th, 1977. Late at night, a Corian starship fled from Sol System under the cover of slow warp, then reached its desired jumping-off point, disabled warp for a few tenths of a second, and vanished into hyperspace with naught but a radio signal, lasting 72 seconds to show for it. Approximately 36 minutes later, an astronomer's equipment recorded the signal value and the symbols 6EQUJ5, and soon it became known for the astronomer's response. The WOW signal, never repeated since, was discovered. End of story. I'd quickly like to thank the T5 channel members and patrons: Caspar Arnholtz, Cam Maxwell, Lord Azrakal, Dragzoon WRE, Holly Sister, Ambrose Cattell, and Quantum Wednesday. Thank you very much.